Alright, we're back at it for 2020. I'm going to set a few swarm traps. I set some the other day at my house with some of my kids and just didn't try to film there. So out here today at one of our traditional spots, got my hanger here. I have another swarm trap down there that will be hanging up, but most of you guys probably know. If you don't, I use the French cleats. Really like those. It's treated wood. I leave it on the tree all year long. I also have the cleat on the back here to hook it. We are going to, I've still got some Swarm Commander left over from last year. So we're going to go with Swarm Commander again this year. I'm putting 2 squirts on top of the top bars. That's what I'm doing this year. I have my feed sack inner covers like I usually use, and my telescoping lids. So one thing that I have done this year, last year I had an awful problem with the bees going in the box, and I don't know if it was because it was my first year using Swarm Commander, and maybe just the attractiveness of the Swarm Commander was creating an environment where they didn't want to go in. Maybe it's so close to the queen pheromone with the spray being out here, they thought the queen was on the outside of the hive. That was one of my assumptions. Not really sure, but I have switched back my hole size for this year, and we'll see how it works. But I'm going back to the 1 1/4 inch hole. I have a 1 1/4 inch spade bit. I don't have it with me, but I took the hole. I think I had a 1/2 inch hole in here last year. I took that 1 1/4 inch bit, drilled these holes out. Now when you have a hole that big, you have to be careful that birds don't get in your swarm traps and build nests. One of the plans on my swarm trap video, the first one that I built, Everything You Need to Know video, it talks about driving a nail up through the bottom. To make it simple, I actually just used a screw. So I just went to the bottom of the box and run me a screw right up through the bottom up to the top. So now you have this little divider there, and that kind of keeps birds from getting in there and building a bird nest, thinking that this is just a mansion of a birdhouse. So I put two squirts on the top bars, and now we're going to put 1 squirt. Well, that wasn't a very good squirt there. We're going to put a good squirt, there we go, inside the hole. So that's it. Let me get it hung up. Alright, so I got it hung up there. Now, running low on straps, and I know some people make fun of my straps because I use the big ratchet straps, and I don't really cut my strap lengths because I use straps for all kinds of things, not just the swarm traps. They're multi-purpose. So, but I am running low on straps. So this year what I've been doing, I've either taken bricks or a rock, and we'll set it on top of the lid. Now, if you do that, make sure you remember that the brick is up there, because if you go to this box here, you really can't reach from the ground. But if it's one you can kind of reach from the ground, and you try to grab it from the ground and you tip the box and the brick falls off that box and hits you in the head, it's not going to feel very good. I don't think you really have to worry about a brick like that falling off the box. You know, if somebody's walking by or if the wind's blowing, that should help hold the lid on. But just be mindful of that if you are if you're going to put bricks or rocks up there. Just try to make sure they're not going to fall off and hurt anybody, and just remember that they're up there when you're taking your boxes down. Alright, let's go to the next one. Now, just as kind of a recap, as far as bait for the hive, you know, obviously we use Swarm Commander as an attractant, but probably the most common, or I don't know if it's the most common, but probably one of the best attractants that you can use is old comb. I know Dr. Leo, he recommends Propolis. I've had some people message me and ask me, you know, if I have any frames for sale. generally that's a no. I try to reuse all my frames that I have, and what frames I do have, especially the older ones, the old dark ones, I use those for my swarm traps. So I do like to use comb, and I like to use old frames. This frame here has a lot of drone comb on it. You know, and generally I don't like to have a lot of drone in my hives. You know, these drone cells, they're good for storing honey. So sometimes I'll move them to the outsides, make them like either 1 and 8 on an 8 frame hive, or 1 and 10 on a 10 frame hive, because they are good for storing honey. But if I have more than I can really use in my regular hives, I will use them for bait for swarm traps instead of just letting them go, because it is very attractive. I also like to use old frames. Here's a frame that, you know, had a little bit of stuff drawn out on it, not much. Here's an old frame. It's got a little bit of wax on the bottom, got some propolis on there, got some wax moth damage. Just frames that I may not use. Sometimes you'll see the bottom bar on my frames may or may not be broken. There's one with an old piece of wire or fishing string. So, you know, I just use a variety of things. These, I don't know if I can get this one out here on the end. I can't even get it out. So that one on the end is pretty tight in there. But like this one here, it looks like it's been left outside. So I do use that. I know Dr. Leo sells propolis, and I tell people all the time, you know, get some propolis, scrape your propolis off your frames if you don't want to buy it. You can use that to rub inside the box. Use old frames. I have a lot of swarm traps that I've just taken frames that have just been eat up with wax moths and knock all the center of the comb and stuff out, knocked all the wax moth damage stuff out, and use those. But that's the best thing to use is old comb, your old black comb, drone comb, any type of old frames with wax moth damage. Broken frames are really good because you're just using it to catch bees anyway. And you know, you can, if you need to mend the frame, just do it later. But that's what I use instead of putting brand new stuff. I don't like to use I don't really like to use more than 1 frame of drawn out comb like that, because it seems like if you get 2 frames side by side, the wax moths really like to get in between them, really web them up and damage it. You have a lot less damage from wax moths if you'll just use 1 frame of comb like that. So I don't like to use more than 1. I do not recommend putting sheets of foundation in here. If you're new to this and just getting started, yeah, you could take maybe a frame with some plastic or wax foundation, 1 frame, and put it in the center. Then just put you some empty frames along beside of it. And like this one here, if you see kind of how I've got this little strip, it's kind of hanging down. You can put like a paint stick or something in there like that, maybe rub some wax on it if you have some, or take you some wax foundation, cut it into strips, and glue it or melt it in there, kind of like I've got some videos on how to do that. I think I said it's the videos like going foundationless with starter strips. I've got that on YouTube that you can watch. But you can put a little strip there in the middle, paint stick, any type of stick of wood. Take your cleat, and instead of leaving it flat, flip it vertical. That also works. But that'll give them something in the middle to kind of hang on and start building with. But I don't like using a lot of sheets of foundation, because it's, in my opinion, when the bees go in this box to check it out for the swarm, they're going to crawl inside the box, fly around in there, see how much room is in there, and they don't see the foundation as future comb. They see the foundation, or the sheets of plastic, foundation or wax, they see it as subdividers in the box. They see it as walls or partitions. Kind of like if you walked in a house and the living room had a whole bunch of walls in there, and you had to walk around each wall to get from one end of the living room to the other. That would not be very attractive to you. If you were looking for a living room with open space, you would want to see a wide open space that you could design and build the way you want to build it. And that's what these bees are doing. They're going in here and checking this out as a potential new home for them. And if you've got a bunch of subdividing walls inside the inside their living room, they're not going to find it as attractive. So that's just a little bit of an update for those who don't know. That's kind of what I like to do. One piece of comb, new frames, old frames, whatever, but just leave the box for the most part open. Like I said, I use the feed sack inner covers because they're cheap, and I have a lot of them for feeding my feeding cows and horses. You can buy those brand new at feed stores for like 50-60 cents a piece, and one feed sack will do a couple of these inner covers. So and you really want that because you don't want the bees to propolize your lid to your swarm trap, because you won't get the lid off. You also want to use something like that because if your lid is warped a little bit, it really helps seal the lid or seal the box tight. One of the things, and I've mentioned this in the past, I'll mention it again this year, bees do not like swarm traps that have a lot of holes and gaps in them. They just don't, in my opinion. Again, going back to the housing analogy, if you go to buy a house and you walk in the living room and there's a hole in the roof, then you're probably not going to buy that house, because you know when it rains, you're going to have water pouring down inside of your home. Same thing with the bees. They're going to fly around the outside of the box, the inside of the box, and it just seems like every time I have a box that gets warped, gets a crack, has holes in it, other than the entrance, they just do not take to that box very, very well. So if you've got some cracks, holes, get you some duct tape. The Gorilla tape, it works pretty good, and tape that box up, seal it up, caulk it, whatever you got to do, just keep it sealed. So get our 2 squirts on the top bars, 1 squirt in the entrance. Grab my feed sack there, cover that up, and put the lid on it. And we will hang it up on this tree here. So my other swarm trap is right down there on the side of that tree. This location here, I normally catch at least 2 swarms, and a lot of years I'll catch 3 here. So last year I didn't have as many traps out, but you know, even with my 1/2 inch hole, I'm not saying that it doesn't work. I mean, I had plenty of luck with it. I had about 125 to 150% success rate on my swarm traps, meaning that I hung up traps. I mean, I don't think I hung up but like maybe 10 or 15 traps last year. I'd have to go back and look at my videos, but I caught more swarms than I had traps out. So at least half of my traps, it seemed like, caught at more than 1 swarm. So I don't know that I had one trap catch 3 last year, but I had several traps that caught more than 1. So I filled both. I don't think I caught 2 swarms here in 1 trap, but I know I caught a swarm in each of these traps. So all right, we're gonna head back down the road and set out one more. All right, it's windy over here. I'm hoping that this the wind doesn't mess with this video too bad, but this is one of my strongest hives coming through the winter. I'm gonna try to find the video. I know that this hive was a swarm caught out of a swarm trap hanging right there later in the summer. Showed some videos of it back in February. It was the screenshot for the video back in February because it was just so strong. I came in, I think in February, and put an extra box, that second box on top there. Came back last week. It's 4 weeks later. That second box was full of brood. I mean, just packed full, both deep, so I had to add another deep. So gonna hang our swarm trap right up here, but these bees, I'm telling you, they're doing really, really well. Most of my bees were not quite ready last weekend to do anything with, so I'm gonna wait till next weekend and hope they don't start to swarm. This one here, it had a little bit of room in these boxes over here. We're still doing really, really well, but I was disappointed to see that this side, all they had was this box down here. So I'm pretty sure this box had already swarmed, because it was 2 boxes full. I added a deep, and then it went back to now it's just one. I mean, there's nothing in the other two. So there's a little bit of brood, not much. So pretty sure that side swarmed. But these hives over here are doing really well. These first three, there's nothing on these sides. But you can see, I mean, they're working really good today. Some of them, this box here, there's some gaps between these two. So this side is also spilling over into this side. But they're bringing in a lot of pollen. Probably be able to see some of the bees. I know there's one down there at the entrance right now. There was one landed on the hive. It's kind of hard to tell what you can and can't see on this camera screen, but it's always a lot clearer with the video. But they are working really, really well. This box, for example, there's bees coming in the notch on the inner cover and down here. This hive wasn't doing quite as good. I don't know if it swarmed. It must have swarmed too, but I mean, it may have not. But there was a lot more bees up in the top than there was in the bottom, so I reversed the boxes there. This one was still pretty good. It had some room up in its super. You can see that one there is working pretty good. I don't have the notch turned around. Had to add a deep to this one, the medium on top, and the or is that a shallow? Not really sure. I think that's a shallow on top, but it was pretty full, so we added a deep. You can see this side, the notch is flipped this way. Bees hanging out there, pretty full. So they are doing really well, moving right along. So I'm hoping by next weekend, unless I have to work, you know, we have the COVID-19 going on, which has really thrown all of us in healthcare for a loop. It really may impact my beekeeping this spring, because my job and the patients are more important than my hobbies. But I'm hoping next weekend to start shifting, like these first three, they only have one side. So I'm going to be shifting, like putting all these in 8-frame boxes. And I mean, even this one, it's got bees on both sides, moving both sides to their own 8-frame box. So that is the plan for next week, is to do that. And I don't exactly know yet how I'm going to do my first run of queens, but the goal is to move these to 8-frame boxes and then leave these boxes in place with some brood and maybe some honey, and either drop queen cells or whatever I decide to do. We're gonna do that. So basically, you know, I'll have an 8-frame hive here, an 8-frame. This one won't be an 8-frame because it's weak, but if this was if these were both sides were full, I would transfer most of the bees from both sides to their own 8-frame box, leave some bees, brood and food behind with the workers, and then they can start their own new colony there with a queen cell or whatever it is that I decide to put in there. So what that end up doing is it'll give me, my honey flow is not going to start for probably another 2 weeks, or probably another about 3 weeks from now, 2 weeks from next weekend. So that'll give the colonies time to get readjusted and to their new setup, and it'll also help me get an early start on my splits and double my colony size. So that's just a little foreshadowing of what's coming up. All right, you guys, good luck with your bees out there. Stay healthy, social distancing, all those good things, and we'll catch you next time.